Hey guys, what's up? Public back with another video, and today we're going to be looking at Hungering Void and kind of deep diving in how it works and what it actually does. This was the new talent that we recently got that replaced Legacy of the Void to kind of be that single target talent, or at least that's the idea of the talent, to funnel your damage into one target. So let's talk about how that works, how it interacts with, where we might use it, and just kind of in general my thoughts on that talent. All right, let's get started. Okay, so what is Hungering Void? So this is kind of another one of those talents that augments our void form in kind of a tangential way, I guess you could say. Similar to Ancient Madness, it is just kind of a passive. So instead of actually buffing void form directly, it chose to buff Void Bolt, which is kind of interesting because we do have a conduit that interacts with Void Bolt as well. So keep that conduit in the back of your head that's kind of generating Void Bolts while you read the spell. So Void Bolt causes the target to become vulnerable to the void, causing them to take 10% increased damage from you for 6 seconds. This effect can only be active on one target at a time. The other half of this is Void Bolt, then cast on a vulnerable target, will be extending the duration of your void form by 1 second on a normal hit or 2 seconds on a crit. So it kind of has like a dual meaning. So basically what this means is your first Void Bolt that you cast puts a debuff on the target, and then subsequent Void Bolts refresh that debuff and also extend void form. And that's kind of that two piece to the coin. So what we know about this for right now, that damage buff only lasts 6 seconds. It does remain with you if you kind of exit your void form. And this does get procced if you get a Dissonant Echoes proc outside of void form, which is very interesting. So you do have a couple ways to actually proc this, which is neat. And you get that kind of void form extension mechanic as well, which is a little reminiscent of how old Shadow worked, although there's no stacking haste. So I don't know, it's kind of interesting, the idea of like pushing the void form, although in reality there's not a whole lot of control here. You don't notice it a whole lot. Again, 1 to 2 seconds is not a whole lot you're going to notice because, you know, Void Bolt does have a cooldown, right? You're not casting it all the time. Once we get enough haste, you'll start casting a little bit more of these guys, so we might notice it a bit more as we get down the road with our gearing, but especially kind of at launch of Shadowlands especially, you're not going to notice that a whole bunch. But the increased damage that the target does take, that kind of single target nuke, that does affect a lot of our spells. I say a lot. I was just testing this. It does not affect things like pet spells or kind of legendary effects. So Eternal Call of the Void, that was actually Mind Flays, Mind Seers are not affected by this. Shadow Fiend, Mindbender melees are not, as well as Shadow Flame Prism is not. This is very, very important. So now, unlike things like our Mastery that also don't affect those spells, this does affect things like Covenant abilities, right? So Unholy Nova, Mind Games, all that good stuff. And it also affects things that are not pre-spells. So if you have an unused damage trinket, for example, that does get buffed by this debuff, which might be a little strong, depending on the talent, or sorry, the trinket, I should say. There is a couple trinkets that do have unused damage, even coming out of Castle Nathria, so that synergy is going to be pretty good there. I haven't done specific testing in SimC to see if it is worth it to hold those unused trinkets for Void Form, although I'm sure it will be if they're getting buffed by 10%. So that part is pretty neat, although again, it can only be active on one target at a time, right? So it is still kind of that single target thing. So if there's like an AoE trinket or something, it's not going to hit that one target more, right? So Unholy Nova is a great example. You have that dot active on like 3 or 4 targets. Only the one with the Hungering Void debuff on it gets that increase, right? So it is still a single target priority spell, which I think is pretty great, giving us another kind of chosen option in our toolkit to say, hey, you know, the Blood Council fight from Castle Nathria, for example, I can get some benefit out of multi-dotting and that kind of stuff, but in reality, I do want to focus my damage into one target rather than kind of hitting all of them equally. And this talent does help you do that, which is really, really great. I just think it falls a little short here because these numbers aren't that big. Like, again, Void Form by 1 or 2 seconds. Yeah, okay. So you get like 5 extra seconds of Void Form every time, which, like, you know, is a good increase. But, like, will you really notice it that much for a level 50 talent? I'm not quite so sure. And again, the 10% damage boost could be good, but it is, again, it's just 10%. So depending on the spell, again, it's not going to be that much. So I think it's neat, it's interesting. I just don't know if it's that large of an increase for level 50 talents compared to some other classes and specs, but, you know, there you go. So I think it's okay. I think especially if you add on the Dissonant Echoes conduit on top of this, makes it even better. That might be too much of a synergy. I'm not quite sure. I mean, right now, Dissonant Echoes seems super overpowered because it's buffing the raw damage of Void Bolt. And I think based on the last sims that I've ran, you're basically going to run Dissonant Echoes all the time for every form of content. So this talent does kind of get extra better because of that. You're getting those procs outside of void form, which can be really strong. So I think that synergy is interesting and neat. It does kind of say like, hey, you know, we do like crit a bit more now with this talent, so there is that as well. So now again, I did run the kind of stat weight sims. We still love haste. Haste is our still like #1 go-to stat for sure. But when using this talent, it does seem that crit kind of hopscotches over the other secondaries and becomes actually equal to haste in some scenarios, depending on how much base haste that you have. So this definitely does help out crit a little bit. So overall, I think it's an interesting idea. I don't know, like from a DPS gain perspective or playstyle, how much you'll notice it, but I think from a numbers standpoint, it could work out to be pretty good. So time will tell. We have lots of sims to run. That's kind of what I'll be doing for the next couple weeks until Shadowlands launch. But anyways, guys, that's how the talent works. I hope this kind of helped explain things a little bit better for you guys. But that's all we got for Hungering Void. And again, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Big shout out to all the Patreons that are supporting me. We've had a great influx of people supporting, which is just great to see. It really kind of validates all the time and energy I'm spending towards this. So I'm glad you guys appreciate it and like that stuff. I'll be reaching out to them kind of further to kind of figure out what content you guys want to see. I'm really curious about that stuff. But again, thank you to everyone that's supporting me just by viewing this video. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.